I am super tired, so I am gonna get this video filmed as quickly as possible so I can go back to sleep. Anyway, hello everyone, it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to be discussing my 5-star predictions. So back in May, I think, I made my second batch of 5-star predictions for 2021. There are 8 books that I'm going to discuss in this video. I will try and keep it as short as possible because I have talked about these books in previous videos, in my wrap-ups and things like that. And yeah, it's been very surprising. So without further ado, let's get into it. I am gonna start with the worst book on this list. You might disagree with me. I know a lot of people will. But this is a book that I actually didn't finish, and that is I'll put it here, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So this is a very popular dark academia novel, and this is all about a character called Oliver, who has just been released from prison. So at the start of the book, he has just been released from prison after spending 10 years inside for the murder of one of his classmates. And then we're kind of going back into the past and seeing what happened and the events that unfolded. And there was this theatre group that Oliver was part of, and one of the guys in the group ended up dead. And there is this detective that was investigating the case 10 years ago, and now he doesn't think that Oliver was the person that did it. I never got to the end, so I don't know who did it because I was so bored by this book. I really wanted to like this. I had heard such great things about it. Like I said, it's really popular. People love it, but it just didn't work for me. And okay, one of the things that annoyed me the most about this book was the constant quoting of Shakespeare. Now, I get that this book is inspired by Shakespeare, but the level of constant quoting of Shakespeare plays and people trying to be Shakespeare or whatever was just really annoying. I'm not a huge fan of Shakespeare, and I knew, what I was getting into. I knew that this was inspired by Shakespeare. It's not like I didn't know that. I wanted to give it a go. Just because I'm not a fan of Shakespeare doesn't mean I wouldn't like it. I've read Shakespeare retellings and I loved them, but I'm not a huge fan of Shakespeare. I never have been. I didn't enjoy studying some of his stuff in school. I'm only really familiar with Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth and Hamlet, so there was a lot of things in here that I didn't understand and didn't recognise, other than the fact that I knew it was Shakespeare. But it really got on my like, it was just so annoying, and the characters were talking in riddles a lot of the time, which I just didn't enjoy. None of it just felt interesting and exciting, and I was bored. And I got quite a far way into it. I remember getting to about here, so I was a decent chunk of the way through it, but I just couldn't continue with it. I really, really wanted to push through and get to the end, but it was just torture. The writing's not terrible, There were some moments where it really, really worked and really stood out, and I liked it a lot. But just the pacing of it was very slow, and yeah, I didn't enjoy it. I'm really sorry if this is one of your favourite books. I'm glad that you love it, but I hated it. So that was a DNF, unfortunately. So I didn't have any 2 or 1 stars this time, which is good. So we're going to move on to 3 stars, and let's talk about this one, The Deep by Nick Cutter. So I read The Troop last year. I've talked about this book a lot on my channel because The Troop was phenomenal. One of my favourite books of last year, one of the best horror books that I have read. I know that book is not for everybody. It is very graphic, very violent, and that doesn't work for some people, but it did for me. So I had very high expectations for this one. I think I said previously, way back when, that The Deep was written before The Troop. It's actually the other way around. The Troop was written before The Deep, which then made me think it was going to be even better because, you know, you're kind of expecting writers to improve all of the time, whatever. But this one was just very underwhelming. It was still a really good book. So this is all about this guy. He's a vet, I think, and he gets sent down to the bottom of the ocean, the deepest point in the ocean, which is the Mariana Trench, where his brother is working on this cure for a disease that is ravaging the planet, supposedly. Now, this disease is called the Gets, which is an extreme take on Alzheimer's, and it basically means that your body just forgets how to function and it kills you, you know. So there's this thing down at the bottom of the ocean that they've discovered that they think might be the cure, but some creepy shit starts happening and they're trapped in this pod in the bottom of the ocean. There were moments in this book that I really liked. There is a particular scene about halfway through the book involving bees. If you've read it, you will know what I'm talking about, and I loved it. I mean, I'm not terrified of bees. I think bees are lovely and they need to be looked after because they look after our planet. But oh my gosh, that scene scared me. And I just thought it was a really good example of how good Nick Cutter can be at writing really gruesome moments. So I liked that. I loved how easy to read it was, and I loved the pacing, but it just wasn't as intense as The Troop. I will come out and say it, you know, it just wasn't as good, which is fine. But yeah, I had a lot of hopes for this book and it didn't live up to all of them. I didn't get the kind of claustrophobia in this that I was expecting, just because, you know, they're trapped down at the bottom of the ocean. I thought it would have felt more claustrophobic, more sinister, especially the ocean, you know, because you don't know what the is down there. Like, I didn't get that with this, which was kind of disappointing. And the main thing that really annoyed me about this book was the fact that in the blurb it talks a lot about this disease of the Gets, so you're kind of expecting that to be the main point of the book. But that's only mentioned a couple of times and you don't actually get to see the impact of that as much, or, you know, the kind, like the experience of having it. I thought we would have seen more of that. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to read this book, was just that concept of having this disease where your body just forgets how to function. But yeah, it was still a good read, quite a light horror compared to The Troop. So if you do want to try Nick Cutter but you're a bit worried about graphic content and things, I would suggest starting with this one, because it's a lot more tame than The Troop. But yeah, it just didn't completely work for me, but I still liked it. Alright, so my next 3-star read was The Gilded Ones by Namina Fauna. A very recent read for me. I read this last month. Talked about it in my last video, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. I've heard incredible things about this book. A lot of people have really, really enjoyed it, so this is why I thought it was going to be 5 stars for me. But again, with The Deep, I just ended up being very underwhelmed by it. And I realise now, you know, in hindsight, obviously it's young adult fantasy, so it's not going to contain all of the things that I like in fantasies. You know, I love high fantasies, epic fantasies, dark fantasies, you know, things that are a bit more detailed and a bit more graphic, a bit more violent, you know. I mean, this book was still quite brutal in parts for a young adult fantasy. There were some things that the main character endures in this that were just very, brutal. And I was reading them and I was going like, what the... But yeah, this is all about a girl who is part of she lives in this village, and all of the girls, once they reach the age of 15, they have to take part in the blood ceremony. They get their blood tested to ensure that they're pure. So if their blood runs red, they're pure, you know, they're considered, you know, normal, and they get to live life with the rest of their village as they would, you know, and they're accepted in society. Life goes on. If their blood runs gold, they're impure, they're demons, they're dirty, they're evil, you know, all of these horrible things, and they're cast out of society and they're tortured and killed. So our main character, she obviously has gold blood, and then she gets whisked away by this mysterious woman to become part of an army of girls just like her, who are there to fight off the threat of these things called the Death Shrieks. So that concept was really, really interesting, and I thought it was done quite well. I would have liked more world building in this book, which is the main reason why I gave it 3 stars, because I just feel like there was a lot of things that were left out, that were unanswered, and I know there is going to be a second book, so those things might be answered in that book. I hope they are. I'm sure they will be. But I just wanted more world building. I wanted it to feel more fleshed out, more vivid, more real, you know, and I just didn't feel like we got that. Yeah, like that's my main gripe with this book. I thought it ended quite well. It was a weird ending. This book took a very kind of strange direction, but I really, really liked it. I love the twist with the death shrieks. Again, if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I liked, you know, that it was African inspired. It added something very unique to the story, but overall it just wasn't as exciting as I hoped it would be. And the pacing kind of dropped off a little bit towards the middle. I don't know. It just wasn't as exciting for me, unfortunately. But I would still recommend this to people, especially if you're interested in African-inspired fantasies, if you want something a bit different to read, a bit of a different young adult fantasy. It's also a very easy read, so yeah, you know, you read it and make up your own mind. So now we're going to move on to my 4-star reads. We're going to start with this one here, Girl A by Abigail Dean. This is her debut novel that came out earlier this year. There's been very mixed reviews about this. People either love it or hate it. I really enjoyed this. This is all about a woman who she's known as Girl A. So she was the first girl to escape from the House of Horrors. So she lived with her parents and her siblings in a house obviously, that her parents weren't very nice people, essentially, and they abused their children emotionally and physically. It's never really stated, but I think their parents were part of a cult. It's hinted to. It's never explicitly said that they were, but it is hinted to. At least that's the feeling that I got from this, that their parents were part of a religious cult. But yeah, this woman, she escaped when she was a girl. Her father died and her mother was put in prison. And the story starts when she gets told her mother has just died and has left her the house in her will. And it's up to the woman to decide what she's going to do with it. And then we're just revisiting the past through the perspective of different members of the family, so the different siblings. And just, seeing what their experiences were like and how they have coped with it afterwards. And it was very interesting. It was very dark and very brooding at times, which I love in thrillers. And I just loved all of the character studies. It's one of my favourite things at the minute, is just these really deep and personal character studies where you get inside their heads and you get to see what they're thinking and feeling and how that informs their decisions. And yeah, I really, really liked that aspect to this book. And I know that's one thing that has put people off this, because they were expecting it to be a very intense and exciting thriller. This is not that. This is a slow burn, and it's not so much of a solving something as more of finding out what happened in the past kind of thing, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. I'm tired. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. The only reason why it wasn't 5 stars for me was just because sometimes I felt like things were being repeated that we'd already been told. And I just felt like it could have ended a little bit sooner. I felt like it did go on longer than it should have, but still really enjoyed this. A really good debut from Abigail Dean, and I'm excited to see what she puts out next. So the next 4-star read was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. So this was a book that I was very excited for. I first heard about it towards the end of last year. It was one of my most anticipated reads. I finally got round to it in May. I think it was May. I annotated the crap out of it as well. This was like the first book that I ever tabbed and annotated. And I really, really enjoyed this book. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So even though I hate Shakespeare, like I said, I do enjoy retellings. This is set in Shanghai, China in the 1920s, and it is a dark fantasy. So what more could you ask for? That combination is just perfect. So we have Juliet, who is a member of the Scarlet Gang, and then we have Roma, who is a member of the White Flowers. These two gangs are rivals within the city of Shanghai, but there are some murders taking place that are killing members of both gangs, and so Juliet and Roma have to put their differences aside and team up to figure out what is going on, who's killing these people, or what's killing these people, because there is a monster lurking within the rivers of Shanghai. And I really, really enjoyed this. There was so much tension and so much chemistry between Juliet and Roma. It was unbearable at times. I was so frustrated and I just wanted them to get together. you know, the conversations they had with each other, this back and forth, just worked really well. And I love Juliet. She's one of my favourite female characters. She's just so... I love her because she is very... She's very independent. She's single-minded. She has this idea of what she wants and she's determined to get it. She doesn't always make the best decisions, which she acknowledges. And she's also very vulnerable. You know, she's got this side to her that she doesn't want other people to see, but it slowly starts to seep out every now and then, and we get to see, you know, the Juliet behind this facade that she has created. She is badass, you know. She just takes no bullshit from anyone, which I love. But you know, she does have a vulnerable side, and things do get to her. And as the story progresses, you get to see that more. And Roma really brings out that vulnerable side in her. And I adore her so much. I just really, really enjoyed this. I just didn't give it 5 stars because there were moments in it where I felt they could have been more tense, more, like the stakes could have been higher. I wish there had been more romance in it, because to me there just wasn't enough. That's my personal preference. You might disagree with me. The ending frustrated me. It ended on a cliffhanger, and I normally love cliffhangers, but this one just really, really frustrated me a bit. But I'm definitely going to be picking up the second book because I need to know what happens next. Maybe you think my rating isn't justified. Even I'm starting to question myself now. But whatever, 4 stars. Still a really fantastic book and another great debut. Chloe Gong has so much potential to be amazing. And yeah, I really encourage everyone to pick this one up. So now we're going to move on to the books that were 5 stars, and we have 3 of them this time. 3 of them. But I'm going to start with Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I love this book, right? It was everything people said it was. I know some people have complained that there is a lot of exposition, and I can totally see that. I thought the same, but it didn't put me off. In fact, I thought it kind of added something kind of different to the book. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm so in love with Julian Diaz that's not enough for me to lower my rating. I love Julian. He was such a great character. Let's talk about what this book is about first. But this is a book about a trans guy called Yadriel who wants to be a Brujo. He hasn't been able to take the initiation that you do to see if you are a Brujo. You know, his the society that he lives in hasn't allowed him to do that. So he goes off and does it on his own with the help of his friend. And he does it because his cousin has been murdered. So he is trying to bring back the ghost of his cousin so they can find his body and find out what happened to him and put him to rest. What he actually does is he actually ends up summoning the ghost of Julian Diaz, who has also been killed, and they don't really know what's happened to him either. So then they're trying to figure out what happened to Yadriel's cousin as well as Julian, and is so much fun. Everything that happens after that is just so much fun. I was having such a great time. Julian is so annoying. He's one of those characters that is so annoying you can't help but love him for it. He's cocky, you know, he's very sure of himself, but you know, he has a soft side, and he's fun, which was just what I loved. And the fact that he was very accepting of Yadriel, and who Yadriel is, was just lovely. And I really loved their friendship with each other and how their relationship developed and the dynamics between the two, because they are two very different people, but they worked really well together. And I just loved everything to do with the Latinx culture in this book, and it being set during the time of their Halloween celebrations, which over there in South America is the Day of the Dead. I love all of that. You know, that it just had so much atmosphere and this great kind of party vibe, but at the same time it was just really spooky, and atmospheric. So I really enjoyed all of that. It was very different to anything I've read before. I think Aidan Thomas is a really great writer as well. I thought it was really easy to read. I thought the pacing was just right as well. I know some people will think that the pacing is quite slow, but I think it had to be at times for the characters' relationships to develop and for the things to play out that needed to play out. I loved how it ended, you know, it was all happy, and I just love this book so much, and I can't wait to read it again. It's the perfect book for Halloween because, you know, that is coming up soon, so go and check this book out if you want something that's fun and a little bit different. So next we have The Minders by John Marrs. This is his most recent thriller, and this is the third book that I've read by John Marrs. So The Passengers I read last year, 5 stars, one of the best thrillers I've ever read. It was so good. I read The One back in March. That was 4 stars. That was another fantastic thriller. This one, amazing. I wouldn't say it's as good as The Passengers, but it's very close. I will just say very quickly, if you want to read this, I would suggest you read The Passengers and The One first, because this book does spoil some of the plot points from both of those previous books. And that's one of the things that I loved about this, was that continuity, and that inclusion of those previous plot points. It makes the world that John Marrs writes in, you know, more real, and just kind of ties everything nicely together. Oh God, 1 second. I swear, like, every time I start filming, somebody is doing something outside. But this is all about these 5 people who get selected by the government to become minders. So they have the UK's most sensitive security information implanted into their brain, and then for the next 5 years they have to live anonymously, and keep this information, you know, a secret to stop terrorism. And, you know, they have to leave their old lives behind, and just keep moving around the country. And we're just basically looking into how that affects these 5 characters individually, because they all have very different backgrounds. You know, some of them are parents, some of them have important jobs, some of them don't have jobs. And some of them, you know, cope with it better than others, but they all have some creepy, shady shit going on, as does every character in John Marrs's novels. So it was very interesting to see how having this information affected them and what they did moving forward. The character that I was most interested in this book was Charlie, just because very early on it was alluded to that he was the how can I put it without spoiling it? He just had some things going on that made him seem like he wasn't the right person for this job. He was interested in conspiracy theories, shall we say. So I was very interested in his character throughout the book, but there were so many plot twists that it just, it was very slow to get going, but once it got going, there's twist after twist after twist. You just don't know how the story is going to play out. And I love that with John Marrs, he throws curveball after curveball after curveball at you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I also annotated this book as well, so I was making a lot of notes and just kind of like noticing things that I thought might have been important. And it's quite cool actually to go back through the book and see what I was thinking at the time, and then realise how wrong I was about a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I read this book very quickly. I highly recommend it. I just recommend John Marrs in general. I think he's fantastic. So I'm really, really pleased with this one. Okay, so we're on the last one now, and I recently talked about this book in my August wrap up. When I filmed that video, I hadn't finished it, but I have finished it now. And of course it was 5 stars. It was always going to be 5 stars. And that is The Poppy War. I know a lot of you watching this will have already read this, and you will agree with me when I say that this book is phenomenal. Where do I start with this book? There is so much to talk about, and I have a lot of thoughts on this, but my main thought is just what the It was intense, it was vivid, it was well thought out, it was unique, it was a roller coaster. I could go on, but this is a Chinese inspired fantasy all about a character called Rin. She takes part in the Keju, which is a series of tests designed to see who can get into the most elite military school in Nikon. And she aces the test, she goes to military school, and the first 200 or so pages of this book are literally just about Rin being in military school. And she's learning about the history of the Nikaran Empire and the Poppy Wars, Poppy War 1 and 2, and how that affected the Empire and the people living there. There's a lot of talk about the history and the politics and war strategies and stuff. But she also does a lot of things to do with law. So she has this teacher, I think he's called Jiaying, and he kind of teaches her the law of the empire, so about all of the gods and things like that, the myths and the legends. And he also teaches her about shamanism. And I really like that aspect of this book. And then Rin discovers some things about herself that she wouldn't have known if she'd ever gone to military school. And then the next 200-300 pages are just off the scale. We are headed into war. It's the Third Poppy War. And there's a lot of stuff going on. It's violent. There are some very graphic scenes in this book, some graphic depictions of death. So just be wary of that. There are some trigger warnings for this. But it is a war, and Bryn is fighting on the front lines. And I can't say any more because I will spoil it. But wow. Just wow. This book made me cry. And I have never cried at a book before. I don't remember a time ever when I've been reading a book and I have shed a tear. But this one, it made me cry. Because there is this scene where they go to a town and it has been massacred, and just the way that scene is written and the way it is depicted, it's emotional, and I don't think anyone would be able to read it without feeling something. If you have empathy, just soon as that happened, I knew this book was 5 stars, because yeah, if you can make me cry, if you're a writer and you can make me cry, you're a good writer. But this book is incredible. The world building is wild, and there is so much history and information being thrown at you. And again with this, I was annotating the crap out of it. Like, I was making so many notes. I had so many predictions. Where are they? There's this whole page where I just wrote theories and stuff. I can't find it. Here we go. That's like, I was just writing theories about what I thought was going to happen. I also wrote, about like what shamanism is and the concept and stuff, and I was just, having so many ideas. I was wrong about all of them. There's absolutely no way you could predict how this book is going to end. I just really, really love this. I was just so engaged with it. It did take me a while to read it, but you do have to read it slowly, I think, to take it all in. I will have to reread this because I know there is still so much that I have missed or have forgotten. But I can't wait to read the second and third book in this series. Everything that people have been saying about this is 100% true. I can totally understand why people love this book so much and why people love this series so much. Oh my god, if this book was a person, I would hug it to death. I would. I loved it so much. Please go and read it if you haven't. I demand that you read it because it's one of the most incredible fantasy books I've read in a long time. And having said that, that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. I know it was a long one, but I really enjoyed revisiting these books and seeing whether my predictions were right or not. I got 3 right, so that's pretty good. I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos from me in the future. Hit the bell button so you don't miss any. I will be having another 5-star predictions video going up very soon, so stick around for that. And I will see you all in my next video very soon. Bye guys.